Hello everyone, and welcome to a brand new theory and speculation video. Today, I want to talk about the Harbinger Sandrone, and my speculations on her origins and future. Despite being one of the most reclusive Harbingers, we actually know quite a bit about her, allowing us to make very interesting speculations. Now, this video does contain spoilers for the quests listed on screen now, so if you haven't done those, you've been warned. With all that said though, let's get right into the video. Sandrone is the 7th of the Fatui Harbingers, first seen in A Winter Night's Lasso. From this trailer alone, there isn't much to say about her. She can be seen riding a modified ruin machine, which connects to her love of machinery. While the other Harbingers argue, she calls the banter utterly risible. Notably, when the other Harbingers close their eyes to pay respects at Signora's coffin, she does not. This could be because she only really cares about her research, which would line up with the voice lines we have about her from the other playable Harbingers. Each of these voice lines provides a bit more information on her personality as well. Starting with Tartaglia, he says that every time he's seen Sandrone, she looks like she wants to murder him. He goes on to say that he has no idea what he could have done to annoy her. Wanderer's voice line may help explain this, as he says that she has a terrible personality and dedicates herself fully to her research. As such, she may just hate being around people. Additionally, Wanderer doesn't seem to hold a lot of respect for her, saying how pitiful it is that she could only secure a seat one below his as Scaramouche. Moving on though, Arlecchino says that she doesn't appear in public very often and that not many people see her. She juxtaposes this behavior with that of Dottore, who creates segments of himself to better wander the land. Sandrone is more of a recluse and tends to spend her time alone, a trait that'll cover more in a bit. Now, despite not making an in-game appearance yet, it is heavily implied that Sandrone was involved with the story of the World Quest series, Questioning Melusine and Answering Machine. The story of this series revolves around the machine Curve, an intelligent mech created by deceased researcher Mosso Lombroso. At the beginning of the questline, Curve was assisting the Melusine Talushard in investigating the disappearance of Sir Arthur, the Steambird's mascot robot. Throughout the quest, it is revealed that an editor for the Steambird named Jenk was working with the Fatui to acquire Curve, as a certain Harbinger was interested in this machine. We would end up confronting Jenk in Mosso's laboratory, where to escape capture, he would destroy the entire place. In order to save the Traveler, Paimon, and Talushard, Curve would sacrifice its life and allow them to escape. Curve's destruction would not go over well with the Harbinger, and Jenk would be severely punished. He would be found trussed up inside the Opera Epiclese, with his tongue cut out and his mind broken. There was also a note in his mouth from the Harbinger, in which they apologized to the Traveler, Paimon, and Talushard. As for the reasoning behind this letter, it is assumed that the Harbinger either did not wish to make enemies out of them, or perhaps they felt remorse that Curve had been destroyed. There are only two Harbingers that are focused on machinery, those being Sandrone and Dottore. Since an apology wouldn't fit with Dottore's character, the Harbinger behind this letter is most likely Sandrone. While she never made a physical appearance, this questline does show that she has her sights on Fontaine. Before I go on to the next section, it's worth mentioning that Sandrone bears a strong resemblance to Catherine of the Adventurers Guild. Back during the Sumeru Archon quests, Nihida confirmed that Catherine is a bionic Snezhnayan puppet. As such, it is possible that the Catherine puppets are built by Sandrone and are based on her appearance. Now that we've discussed what we know about Sandrone, I want to go over her potential origins. Like most other Harbingers, Sandrone's origin is currently a mystery, but there are still plenty of ideas and theories to talk about. While I don't believe in this first theory anymore, I still think it's worth talking about Guizhong. When she was first revealed in version 3.4, many people noticed certain similarities between the late God of Dust and Sandrone. Not only did she bear resemblance to the Harbinger, but she was also interested in Conrian technology and was an extremely skilled engineer. Therefore, it's possible that Guizhong could have experimented with Conrian puppet technology, the same technology Raiden A used to create Scaramouche and the Shogun puppet. After Guizhong's death, the puppet would have been left alone to wander the world, eventually joining the Fatui. As much as I love Guizhong, I don't think this theory is true. Plus, having two Harbingers being puppets created as tests by different gods doesn't seem all that likely. Instead, I believe more in the Marianne theory, which suggests that Sandrone has some sort of connection with Marianne Guillotine. If we look at the picture of the Narcissan Christ Institute that shows a young Marianne, you can definitely see the resemblance. Not only do the hair and eyes match, but the color scheme in general is also quite similar. Despite these similarities, Sandrone cannot be the same Marianne we see in this picture. During the battle with an Elenis over 400 years ago, Marianne was gravely wounded by a massive explosion. In her dying moments, Lyris would dissolve and absorb Marianne's consciousness. Lyris would then return to Anapausis and take on the appearance of Marianne. If the original Marianne was dissolved and absorbed by Lyris, then how could she be Sandrone? Well, that's where her brother, Elaine Guillotine, comes into the story. Elaine was noted as being a very rigid and serious person, seeming to only care about his research. Sounds familiar already, right? He was also an incredible engineer, being able to make Seymour during his time as a Marchaussee hunter. After the battle with an Elenis, Elaine would leave the Marchaussee Phantom and eventually went on to establish the Fontaine Research Institute, where he would make a ton of different inventions. Eventually, in his old age, he retired and isolated himself in his workshop, focusing on nothing but his research. Sounds familiar again. None of the research he did during this time would ever be published though, and after his death, the traces left behind in his workshop only showed that something had been built. It's unknown what this something was, but I believe it could have been Sandrone. After all, if Elaine could create Seymour as a young Marchaussee hunter, why couldn't he create Sandrone in his later years? He may have missed his sister dearly, which could explain why Sandrone bears such resemblance to Marianne. Additionally, this Marionette would have been influenced by her creator, which is why Elaine and Sandrone seem to have quite a few similarities. Both only seem to care about their research, both made a variety of machines, and both isolated themselves. To me, this seems like the most likely theory from what we know now. Now then, I'd like to discuss how Sandrone could come into the story later on down the line. Being a reclusive Harbinger, it makes sense that we haven't seen her in-game yet. While we will likely have to wait until Snezhnaya to see her, there is still potential for us to meet her before we get there. If she really was created by Elaine, we could see her in a Fontaine interlude quest at some point in the future. Perhaps Sandrone wishes to recover some research from Fontaine done by her creator Elaine over 400 years ago. Wanderer calls her inventions a copious amount of garbage, so perhaps she is looking for a way to improve her designs. After all, we do know that she was interested in Curve, so there is the possibility that she'll be interested in other Fontaine mecha. A story like this could also tie back into the Narcissan Kreis questline. Of course, this means in order to access this interlude quest, you would need to finish the Narcissan Kreis questline. If it does tie into this questline, we could see Sandrone interact with Seymour, Oceanid Marianne, and the other characters we met in that questline. These characters would be tied to Sandrone's past after all, as they were friends of Elaine. If they were all to meet, it would give us more information on Elaine and how he created Sandrone. As for when this quest could take place, I'm thinking it could happen in the latter half of the 5.x updates. This would be similar to how we got more Sumeru Desert lore with the Temple of Silence in version 4.6. It would allow us to return to Fontaine for a brief time and get more lore on the region. Focusing on her role in Snezhnaya, she could be involved with some revelations about the Adventurers Guild. I mentioned earlier that the Catherine puppets may very well have been made by Sandrone. If that is the case, she could be behind the Adventurers Guild and its operations as a whole. As for why she would create the Adventurers Guild, I think that has something to do with the future war we've been getting hints of recently. The Adventurers Guild may be Sandrone's way to get as many people as possible trained and ready to fight against whatever's coming. The more adventurers they have, the stronger army they have against their enemies. Now then, like the other Harbingers I've covered before, I believe that Sandrone will end up being playable. This could happen with the interlude somewhere in the 5.x updates, or potentially after Snezhnaya is released. As for her kit, I do have a few ideas. In a Winter Night's Lasso, we can see her being carried around by a modified rune machine. I think it would be fun if this rune machine was part of her kit, similar to how Clara and Svarog work in Star Rail. Her ultimate could allow the rune machine onto the field to fight enemies for a certain period of time. Her skill could also summon smaller ruin machines that either give buffs or attack in a similar way to Furina's skill summons. As for her element, I think Geo would be a good fit. She is extremely dedicated to her work and would have hard-hitting attacks with her ruin machine, things that both fit Geo. For her weapon, I only really see her as a catalyst user. After all, she is quite reclusive, so she'd want to stay far away from her enemies. Anyways, that's pretty much it for my thoughts on Sandrone and her potential roles in the future. If you want to hear more of my thoughts on ideas I mentioned in this video, I recommend my videos on the Harbingers of Natlan, Il Capitano, Columbina, and Pantalone. Also, I will be making videos focusing on the other Harbingers in the future as well. I would love to hear what ideas you all have for Sandrone in the comments below as well. Anyways, that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. Sources and further readings are also in the description if you want to check them out. I hope you all have an amazing day, and I'll see you all in the next video.